Okay, hello everybody. My name is Rochelle. I'm the Community Manager at Reinteractive, and welcome to this webinar on managing a remote work team. So our presenter today is Mikel Lindsaar, who is the founder and CEO of Reinteractive. Mikel is well known in the Ruby and Rails community as a blogger. He is also the author of Mail, which is the Ruby email handling library, and he is known for his extensive work on the Rails Action Mailer component. He is the author of the book Why Rails and will be launching his new book, Confidence Software, early next year. So welcome, Mikel.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let's get started. I hope everyone can see my screen. It should be on your page now. It should say Managing Remote Teams. If anyone can't see it, please let us know, but I'll proceed assuming that everyone can. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you and giving you some knowledge about how we manage remote teams at Reinteractive. Just to give you a little bit of a background, Reinteractive is a remote work company, and the reason we're doing this webinar is, to be honest, we're asked many times, how do you actually manage your remote team? So we're not a small remote team. We've got around 40 people scattered across 5 countries in about 8 time zones, I think. And I've lost count actually, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we have a lot of skills that we've learned in the area, and I'd like to share some of those with you. So let's get rolling. Feel free to ask questions. This is a interactive webinar. I'll either answer them as we go, or I will come up and push them off towards the end, depending on what comes up as we move through. Who am I? Well, Rochelle gave a pretty good briefing. But basically, I founded Reinteractive in 2010. I've delivered hundreds of successful software development projects through Reinteractive and my amazing team. We've grown to over 40 staff in 7 years, about 30% average yearly growth, 54% growth in the last year alone, and we haven't taken on investment to do that. So it's been a totally bootstrapped business and completely self-funded and grown organically through delivering good products to our clients. I'm the author of a book called Why Rails and Confidence Software, which should be out end of this year, early next. I've started and sold 2 software as a service businesses, and I'm author of the Mail Gem, which Rochelle pointed out, and it's been downloaded more than 93 times, 93 million times, 93 times, yeah, that would be good. So yeah, I've got some experience about this company and how to build it, and really all of that's been done while I've been remote. We've never had a formal office. So this talk's going to be talking about how we did that and perhaps how you can do it. So how to interact? Well, in the webinar, you can ask in the questions panel, as I said, and I will get to it and answer it as well as I can. Or if you're watching this online from our YouTube channel, you can do it via Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Send us a message. And of course, you can also get in communication with Rochelle via community@reinteractive.com. And she will get that message. So let's get to it. What are remote teams? Well, there's a really interesting point here. You have to remember that remote teams are not an all or nothing thing. Just like life, there's a bit of everything in it. And just like remote teams, if you're not really at a point where you've got a remote team and you're looking to implement it, you can go bit by bit. You don't have to go all whole hog tomorrow and everyone's remote and go from there. There's actually a gradient scale to remote work. And that gradient scale is done, it looks like the following. So down the bottom, you've got remote work prohibited. So some companies do this. In fact, IBM, which used to be the biggest company proposing and telling everyone to go to remote work, is now moving all their employees to not be remote work, while still encouraging their clients to do remote work, which to me is a little bit confusing and not really on the straight and narrow. I don't quite understand how that works, but there you go. I don't think they are remote work prohibited as such, but that is the bottom of the scale. And in some situations, unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know, if you're dealing with highly sensitive data, or you have to have access to equipment to do your work, then you'll be in a remote work prohibited environment, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Up from that, you've got tolerated. This is where, you know, occasionally a person might be sick and work from home or something like that, and you'll have a different set of tools to handle that. Then you've got remote work encouraged, where You might have, 2 or 3 days a week where people take off or go and work from home, or X period per month they're working from home. Then remote work first, which is where you've got a company that has a lot of remote work people, but also has an office, and they are primarily remote work as opposed to the opposite, which would be remote work tolerated. And then we've got remote work only, which is what reinteractive is. We don't currently have any sort of particular office. We have spaces where we will meet a client and do work with a client if they need to have a conference setting or something like that. But we are primarily, or not primarily, we are remote work only. All of our staff work from home as a main thing. They might go out on site and meet a client occasionally, or they might hold a webinar at a university, or a seminar at a university or something like that. But all of our team work from home. So we are remote work only. Now, the key thing of this gradient scale of remote work is that there's an increasing level of two-way trust required. And this is a key point, because the more remote you go, the more trust you need to have, both in the team, and the more trust the team needs to have in management. And this is a really key thing. You can't micromanage in a remote work environment, so you have to have more trust. So why is there increasing trust? Well, in our experience anyway, we expect our staff to get their jobs done. And we tell them quite bluntly, it's your job, and that's what we're trusting you to do, and we need you to get it done. And if you run into stops or barriers or things that are preventing you from producing, you need to let us know, and we need to work with you to get that done. We manage by statistics with clear key performance indicators, which I'll go over a bit later. Then they're reported and worked towards with weekly review. And our staff trust us to focus on their deliverables and ability to work, not office politics and rumors. And this is actually one of the amazing things about remote work. You get to get people who just focus on producing and get lots of products out. And yeah, there's a lot less confusion or noise going on in the company, and people can actually get their jobs done. Of course, sometimes you still need that interaction, and some jobs are better suited to this than others. For example, a software developer's role, which, remote teams, and that's what we're talking about predominantly here, but it can be any remote team, doesn't have to be software. They're very good with remote work because it gives them ample time to focus and turn off the internet and turn off communications tools and just focus on what they're doing. But a lot of other jobs also have that requirement. Even marketing and communications jobs, they need to focus on what they're doing, and there's no reason you don't have to. With the modern internet and the world the way it is, you can definitely do this sort of work remote, and you can have anyone working from home and able to focus on their job. So that's why there's a need for increasing trust in the company. So this talk here is about 100% remote or remote work only. That's what we're doing here, and that's what I'm going to cover from here on out. I have done other talks about gradient levels of it, but not this talk. This is remote work only. So what are some of the benefits of remote work? Why would you want to do it? Let's just quickly cover that. Well, when done right, remote work provides happier staff, increased productivity, larger staff recruitment pool, increased esprit de corps, greater trust in management, greater trust in staff, and decreased costs in wages and rent. Now, why would there be a larger recruitment pool, for example? Well, when you're remote work only, you can expand your recruitment target area. Now, reinteractive, we only recruit from New Zealand and Australia primarily at the moment. We have a couple in the US and a couple in another country in Panama for our 24/7 remote office, support office. But when you go into your restrictions on recruiting come down to the legal restrictions on recruiting. So where are you going to pay tax? What corporate setup do you need to have? How do you withhold, pay-as-you-go type taxes? These are the things that become the problem in recruiting remotely. And but even if you don't want to go into that, and you're just in Australia, for example, or just in one country, it means you can recruit people from all over that country. They don't have to move to where your office is. And even in a city like Sydney, if your office is at one end of Sydney and the staff live at the other end of the Sydney, you're looking at 1 or 2 hours of travel in the morning potentially, or more, to get to work. So even just having that ability saves you heaps amount of time. and makes staff happier, and it increases their productivity and allows you to recruit from more areas. Obviously, there's a rent concern. With 40 staff in our company, we can't, they're all working from home. That saves the company a large chunk of money in terms of having furniture, fit out, office, all that sort of thing. So there are some of the benefits. More benefits, better work-life balance. So your staff could see their kids off to school, for example, or go and pick them up at 3 o'clock, spend an hour or two with them, and then do more work in the evenings. Many of our staff do that and have very flexible times that they work. A lot less time spent traveling, 2 to 3 hours a day saved in some cases. And that really adds up. We've got a staff of 40, 2 or 3 hours a day. You're looking between 80 to 120 hours of work a week of time that's being saved. Now, that obviously doesn't translate directly into extra work for the company, but what it does translate into is much happier staff. They're not stuck on the bus for all that time. They can get home, they can do stuff. They're already at home. They don't need to factor in all of that travel. Disasters have less impact, flooding, heavy rain, commute time. My wife worked at a company and she had a 35, 40-minute commute every morning to go to work at the business that she was working at. And heavy rains in Sydney meant, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to work. She'd get in at 10:30, 11 o'clock instead of 9:30. So massive difference in that when there are some disasters. And sickness has less of an impact. So if you ever need to pitch this to your team or to your managers, show them these two slides and you'll get a long way on that. Having everyone at home means that the office bug doesn't get spread around and you don't wipe out your whole team. And it does make a big difference. And we've seen that in action in our company. People will be sick and it's 1 or 2 people that are sick. And even if the sickness is, spreading through an area like Sydney, well, our Perth or Adelaide or Melbourne friends don't necessarily get hit with that. And the New Zealand team doesn't, and neither does the Brisbane team or the Tokyo team or the Oregon team or the San Francisco team. So it's interesting how that works. And it's something to, bear in mind. It definitely impacts the bottom line. So with the benefits out of the way, and if there's any questions on any of that, please, again, feel free to answer just in the questions box and we can roll from there. But with the questions the benefits out of the way, let's have a look at how to be an actual remote work team, because obviously this is what everyone's come for. So how do we be a remote work team? Well, the number one thing you need to do in a remote work team is communication. It's beyond everything else. Communication is king. And how you communicate and when you communicate and who you communicate to, this is critical for a remote work team. If you don't have this worked out, don't start a remote work team. You will fail. The remote work team will not be as productive. It won't deliver the products you need, and you'll just end up in a situation where you're not delivering what you need to deliver. So what do I mean by communication is king? Well, let's give an example. The more the team is remote, the more deliberate the communication is needed. And what I mean by that is when you start having a group of people that are dispersed, you need to make sure that the communications that are happening are needed, necessary, succinct, not waffling, not distracting, as sharp as possible. The way we do this at Reinteractive is we set up a chat room. Now we use Flowdoc, but you can use Slack, IRC, whatever tool du jour that you like. And we have one chat room that's dedicated to all general communication. And the main theme in this main general room is no real talk about work. So people aren't talking about specific projects in there. They're not talking about, specific tasks or actions or coordinating in there. And then we have a chat room per project for specific communications. So we might have a chat room for project A, another one for project B, another one for project C. We actually, at Reinteractive, because we do client work, we actually end up having 2 chat rooms. We have one chat room for our team to talk about the project, and we have another chat room which is our team plus the client's team. And that gives our team an ability to have a back channel or coordinate on things and do things to make sure that we're doing our internal admin correctly and all of that sort of stuff. And then we've got the client-facing team for questions and coordination with the client and the product owners. This works out really well for us. Now, because we're remote only for our entire company, we also have a sales channel, a new business clients channel. We have an executive room for the senior management. We have establishment for in terms of HR and all this sort of thing. We have all these production and other rooms that relate to different functions of the group, like the community room, which is where we organize this webinar from, and so on and so forth. And each of those rooms is themed to what they're doing. Now, one of the key things about this is in the general room, you should make sure you announce all your wins and successes loudly and often. Now, this is really important because your team is not all sitting together in an office. If some good news comes in about a client, or someone successfully did something that was a real challenge, or you won a new contract, people don't get to hear that because they're not sitting in the same room. They don't get to hear the cheers or the yay, we got it, or whatever that happened over in the other corner of the office. So you need to make sure you really deliberately communicate that. So every time that we win a big contract, or any client has said anything nice about any of our developers, bam, straight into that general chat room. We make sure we make a big noise about it. We say, hey, everybody, we make sure everyone gets alerted on it. Joe just got a fantastic recommendation from Frank, the client, and they're really happy with Joe's work, and they want her to keep working on the project forever. And they said that please don't take her off us, and blah, blah, blah. And, we make a big noise about it. That gets the whole team the ability to participate and be part of the team, because a team is a group of people that are working toward the common goal, right? So you need to make sure that you keep reminding everyone, what is the common goal? Like, why are we here? What are we producing? Why is that awesome? So that's one part of communication is king. Another part is that all team members need to announce their presence. So make sure arriving to work and leaving work is announced. Include lunchtime breaks and other random breaks, and because it helps if everyone knows what the other team members are thinking and doing. So when you're arriving to work, for example, so in the morning, the rule is that in the general channel, everyone goes, hi, everyone, I'm here, or good morning, or whatever. When they're going to lunch, they just say, hi, I'm stepping out to lunch. And they mention this in their project room so that everyone knows where everyone is. And this is really important because, again, you can't just see the person across the room. You don't know if that person is eating lunch. And if you know they're eating lunch, you're not going to bug them about a work cycle, because a lot of people have these, notifications and pop-ups and things. And if you're pinging someone during their lunch break, it's going to annoy them. So making sure that you are keeping the rest of your team informed of where you are and what you're doing and how you're doing is very important. It keeps people from being frustrated if they can't find who they need and when they need it. It's amazing how quickly you can get frustrated when you're trying to locate a remote team member and you don't know where they are, you don't know if they work, so on and so forth. If you're running a consultancy or a business that deals with clients, you also need to add a few more things in here, which is to make sure the client knows when to expect you around. Or if you are stepping away from 2 hours, like if the developer or staff member needs to go off and handle a doctor's cycle, they need to say, I'm stepping away for 2 hours. I'll be back later this afternoon. I'll be continuing this evening to make sure that we get the work done that you need. And this communication needs to be extra high, because the clients usually aren't familiar with remote work. They don't know how it works. They don't understand necessarily that a team member can disappear for a couple of hours to handle something and come back and keep working and still deliver the products that are needed. So that extra communication is very important to make sure that everyone understands what's going on in the whole scene. Good. The next part of communication is king. Is a really important one. Disagreements are not settled via email. Now, this is a really important bit of information. The more disagreement you have with someone, the closer you need to get to them, virtually or in life, to solve it. If you've had a massive argument with your wife or husband, the way you don't solve it is via SMS, for example. And the same thing happens in remote teams. If you've got someone who's upset about something, sure, find out that they're upset or what's happening. You can prompt them or ask them questions via, the chat channel or whatever else. But as soon as you know they're upset, get it off that chat channel, get it off a text-based communication, and get into communication with them. Talk to them via Skype or a video call, or best off, see them in person. Your team are humans. Settling disagreements via email is just impossible. And in everyone's experience, they get an email and they're like, is that a sarcastic emoji or a happy one? You don't really know. And it's impossible to convey emotion within text reliably. So the other end gets exactly the emotion that you're trying to communicate. And this is a very important point. So if you do get a disagreement or if someone isn't working well with the team, in person as possible with that person to sort it out. Phone call is better than text. Email is better than just a text. Phone call is better than an email. Video is better than a phone call. In person is best. If you can get in person, you can resolve it and you can maintain the structure of your team because you can really understand what's happening with that person and why they got upset, what the situation is, and how to resolve it. So they're the key points about communication. That was 3 slides. There's a lot of data there. But really, communication is king, and I'm going to go over them again. So the 3 of them are, the more the team is remote, the more deliberate the communication is needed. So you need to make sure that you're setting up times to communicate, meetings, which I'll go over in a minute, general communications, sharing your wins and successes. Secondly, all team members need to announce their presence and communicate when they're on deck and off deck, when they're at work or away from work, communicating with their clients because people get frustrated. And thirdly, disagreements are not settled via a long distance communication line, if you like. So there's a line of communication between you and the other person. The further away that is, the more long distance it is. And the more long distance it is, the harder it is to settle a disagreement. So you need to reduce the distance in that communication line by getting on the phone, making it video, which reduces it more, or best of all, getting in person, which reduces the distance to effectively 0, because you're going to shake that person's hand at the end. So they're the most important 3 things that we found in our 7 years of running a 100% remote company that make the team a successful one. So I mentioned earlier that everyone needs key performance indicators. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's no way to just drop past and ask for a TPS report like they say in Office Space, the movie. Now, if you haven't seen Office Space, the movie, you need to go and see Office Space, the movie. It's the absolute antithesis of what a good, productive remote work team would be all about. So we need key performance indicators and statistics to work before. Now, these are agreed upon metrics that you can monitor the production of your team with. It sets up an agreement between management and the team on what is actually a valuable production, and it provides a game for the team to play and work towards. The other key thing it does is it removes politics, because people are either producing or they're not, and you can measure it. Now, some people have asked, actually many people have asked me, what statistic do we use or what KPI do we use to measure a developer, a software developer? And we've spent many years figuring this out. There's famously bad ones like lines of code or hours spent in front of the computer, and none of these are worth anything. They're completely useless. The actual statistic that a developer, or the way you work out a statistic for any product or any job, is you work out, well, what is the actual valuable final product that they're producing? What's the final thing that they're creating that's going into the hands of someone else for some sort of an exchange? They get back either goodwill or money or whatever. So what is the actual thing that that job produces? Now, for a developer, the thing that they actually produce on a daily basis are features. So software features that have been developed that now work. And it's not just a software feature that works, it's a software feature that works that's in the hands of the client, and the client has accepted that it's per what they want. So we call these features delivered, and it's defined as a feature delivered to the client and approved by the client. And this is the statistic that our developers work off. It works out to be really well because naturally, developers and anyone will try to game their statistic. They'll try and make it so they get more of the points that they need to have that statistic work. And as the features delivered count as 1 point per feature delivered, they will try and make the features as small as possible. Now, that's a fantastic thing because the smaller the feature, the better we'll be able to guess how long it's going to take to build. And the more engaged the client will become, because they'll be asking questions about the feature and going back and forth and saying, yeah, this is good, this isn't good, and so on and so forth. So it drives communication with the client. It drives responsibility for the developer for making sure that that feature gets accepted by the client. And it makes sure that the client is well engaged with the project and in constant communication on the project. So that's the statistic we use for developers, but you can set up a statistic for any post. And this is key in a remote work situation, because you don't know that they're at work. And the other thing is that you don't get to see their products all the time. You know, if you're in a factory and someone's sitting there working, at the end of the day, there's a pile of widgets at the end of the production line that person produced. You don't get to see that in a remote work situation. Or if you do, and they're like mailing them in, you might not get to see them for a month. So you need a way to monitor this on a daily, weekly basis, and statistics and key performance indicators are key for that. The other thing this does, as I said, is it does remove politics. You stop just having to manage to make people believe that they're productive. Just like there's no production there. One of the key things you need to watch out for, though, on statistics, an indicator of performance. So you might get someone who's a very good producing person, and their statistics crash for some reason. And like they're producing nothing per statistics. Well, you need to dig into that. You don't just go, well, that person's useless. You need to look into it and find out, well, why is that crash? And it might turn out that the person that they're dealing with, the client, doesn't understand how to accept the feature, or doesn't know how to test it, or there's some other block or barrier on production that's stopping that from getting done. So they're only an indicator. They are only an indicator, and you need to make sure that you take that with the whole situation. So there's something that find out. Similarly, if someone's producing hugely more than everyone else in the company, to that you go, well, why is that? How thing, and then we would need to work out how do we replicate that with everyone else. Or maybe there's some, you know, false reporting going on there that's it's not quite correct. So you want to look into both extremes and keep jostling it and make it better and better and better as you're moving forward. To do in a remote work business is you need to have a weekly meeting. Now, if all of your staff are out, you need to make sure that you're holding a weekly meeting with all the staff, and this is absolutely critical. It needs to be held at the same time every week, little or no variation. At Reinteractive, we do it on a Thursday afternoon at 4:30, and that's the same time every single week, and that's the time we do it. And all of our staff log in. The reason we do Thursdays is because there's no public holidays on a Thursday. It's towards the end of the week. Friday is our professional development day, where our developers are doing training and continuing education and all that sort of stuff. So there's a bunch of reasons why we do it on Thursday, but that's when we do it. You don't have to do it on Thursday if you don't want. So at the team meeting, you need to go over what was achieved the previous week, what's going to get achieved in the new week, and minimal discussion in the team meeting. You just want to focus on the goals and targets. You don't want to have people trying to coordinate and drag it out. Because if you've got 40 people at that meeting, that's a very expensive meeting. Lots of people's time is being spent to be in that meeting. So you need to keep it as succinct as possible. You also want to go over the wins and successes of the company over the previous week, focus on the goals, the expansion plans, what you're doing, overall targets, how we're progressing towards major goals, things like that. This also gives a chance for everyone to share their wins. So people can say, you know, things that they've done or been successful at, and that all gets reported. So in our company, obviously, because we're 100% remote, we have a team. This weekly meeting is with all of our staff, and it goes through all of the divisions of the company: sales, marketing, establishment, community, production, quality, the whole shebang. However, if you've just got one remote work team, like you've just got a team of software developers that are remote, still do the weekly meeting, but then obviously you just focus on the key thing. Team, again, very important. The next thing you need to do is a daily meeting. Now you've got a group. These people are spread out. You need to make every day. Waiting for a week to make sure everyone's going in the same direction, too long. So every project and team should have its own daily stand-up meeting. This needs to happen in the morning. Now you can do this agile or Kanban or waterfall. You can do it however you want. But the important thing is that you have the meeting. And the meeting needs to make sure that everyone is coordinated. a good team has a tendency to know what the other team members are doing and thinking, and then they can coordinate. And that's really the definition of a team. It's a group of individuals who are cooperating one with another to achieve some sort of common purpose, and they normally get a break. So what you need to do is make sure that they are coordinated one with another, and they are achieving a common purpose, and they are rolling forward along that line. So how you hold these meetings is really up to you. At Very Interactive, we tend to do them first thing in the morning, and we might have one project manager or 4 teams or 10 or 5 teams, and then that project manager one meeting to the next all the way through, and just schedule them all sequentially. It's fine, but to work this out on how you do it and make sure that you have that meeting on a daily basis. As long as you're encouraging people to come along and focusing on deliverables, dones, blockers, not dones, or things like that, it'll be a productive meeting. And the meetings only have to be 15 minutes long or less. You don't want long drawn out meetings. If anyone wants to questions or do things like that, it needs to go to a point, which I cover here. So when you come to a meeting, you need to make sure everyone's coming with their data prepared. Their homework needs to be done. So within the meeting itself, you need to ban coordination. And this is a common thing that managers fall into, because they've got the whole team there. They just want to optimize the manager's time and basically waste everyone else's, and do all of this one-on-one coordination with their whole team individually, bit by bit by bit. This is a guaranteed way to kill the daily meeting. If you're a manager, you really need to resist that. If you need to coordinate with someone, you need to understand what you said there. I need to talk to you straight after this. Let's have a quick chat so that we can make sure we're all on the same page there and going in the right direction. You need to schedule a discussion that's a presentation and go goals or something like that. Schedule it as that and do that. And then that can be it's a one-way communication. You're the manager, you're talking about where we're going and how we're going, then people need to coordinate on that. But better yet, you're much better off putting that in writing and getting people to read it, because later, people can refer to it later and all this sort of thing. So people need to come to the meeting with the data complete and information ready to go. Meetings cost serious dollars. You need to make them as short as possible. So if all members aren't present as well, you should record them so people can. So our weekly team meeting, for example, is recorded every week, and then the whole team is encouraged, actually required, to listen to that weekly team meeting if they can't make it for reason. So sure that, and rolling along quite happily. But yeah, make sure that you don't monopolize the meeting as the manager as a way to make sure that everyone is, in sync with you, because then you just have people sitting there listening to stuff that they listen to. They just tune out of the meeting and the value of the meeting gets degraded. So once you've had the meeting, how do you continue to coordinate? Well, Reinteractive, we happen to use Pivotal Tracker for all of our projects. You can also use things like Trello. There's all sorts of Todoist and many other boards. Chat tools, good general communication tool. If you're small enough, you can do a conference call. A bit bigger, you might need to use something like Skype. Even bigger, you might need to do something like GoToMeeting. Our daily meetings with individual teams on Skype, but our weekly team meeting, it would just blow Skype up. So we use GoToMeeting for that, and that works fine for us. And we have shared drives folders, so you can things like Dropbox and stuff like this. Some of the key parts about this, and I go over a little bit later on security, is making sure that the accesses are given to the correct things and important. So I just got a question. So I just got asked, is it mandatory for weekly team meetings in time zones, regardless of time zone? And yes and no. So the way we put our weekly team meeting, most people are able to attend that. However, that weekly team meeting is a one-way communication. So it's designed to go through, for us, it goes through all of our divisions of the company, and every division head talks about what was done last week, what's going to get done this week, and it's a whole coordination meeting like that, just a communication of this is where we're at. So we record that, and if someone is in a time zone where it's like midnight, then we let them listen to it to the next morning. Sometimes though, they will come on board and listen to it at that time of night, because it's better to listen live sometimes. It's more engaging. But yeah, if you can make it mandatory, yes. I mean, team attendance for us, the weekly team meeting attendance is mandatory, but we're also realistic. You know, if the person is in a time zone that it's just impossible. Like right now, I'm actually delivering this webinar from the East Coast of the USA. And I'm running my company that's in Sydney from here quite happily. But our weekly team meeting is at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So I'm not necessarily a single week. I've delegated it while I'm over here. And then I listen to it afterwards. But, you know, I will make the effort and stay up until 2 to actually be at a team meeting coming forward, because it's important that I do attend that every now and then. And yeah, it is critical. I hope that answers your question, Sean. All right. Next, one of the other things you need to do is the individual task size needs to be something you need to consider. I'm just going to end off a couple of these calls. One sec. Okay, good. So individual task size. So get your task size broken down to bite-sized chunks. You don't want a week, because how do you track that? How do you know how far through the task is? And the other thing is, people are very good at estimating half a day or less of work, and they're very bad at estimating half a day or more of work. And that really understand, you know, if a developer or someone goes, yeah, I can do this in, you know, 2 or 3 hours, they're probably right. If they say a day and a half, add 100% to that either way. You know, it could be half a day or it could be 2 days or 3 days. So the more you make it chunked down across any, the better you're going to get through. Now, we use Pivotal Tracker to track all of this, but, you know, with different people, you can do different things. Obviously, all tasks can't be chunked down. For example, we produce a magazine every or so, and the magazine is 15 to 20 pages long, and it's not something that's going to be done in the morning. However, you know, good, copy's done. Now we're waiting for this. Now that's done. Now we're going like that, so that over a period of a week or so, we get that thing to an end product. You need to do this to make sure that your team are actually producing, and that they can get wins, you know, that they're not just hitting their head against a brick wall for the whole week and not getting anywhere by the end of it. Another key point you need to look at is remote workplace health and safety. This is a challenge sometimes. Just one sec though, I just got a question. Let me just, from Nicola. Do you allow a task to be split so that it's only half day, even though it means it isn't really deliverable for the individual task? Yes. So the question was, do we allow a task on this slide here? Do we allow a task to be split? Even though it's not a final product, it's still something done? Yeah, we do. Unless it completely doesn't make sense that that's the case. Right? All of these things have to be taken with a grain of salt in terms of how do you actually produce it and how do you actually get it done. But in many cases, when task is really big and it's a 2-day task, there'll probably be a good half-day task in it that can be done that will move the needle on getting the whole task done. And it'd be better to make sure that that gets done today than nothing by the end of the next day. So it's good to, you are in a meeting and someone says, yeah, I'm working on this, it's going to take me 3 days. You would then call them, because you don't want to stand them up in the middle of that call because it's going to waste everyone's time, but you call them after and say, hey, it's going to take you a week to do or 3 days to do. Is there anything that you can achieve today that's going to move on and make sure that you're not going to run into big barriers that are going to prevent you from doing the whole job? If they say yes, great, roll with it. And it's real, well, fine. You know, you can make every round peg fit every square hole, but it is something to definitely look at. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, good. All right, now where were we? Let's move forward. Remote workplace health and safety. So get your team trained on WH&S. This is really critical and it's part of your legal responsibility as a manager and running a remote team. We did this and we do this every year or so, and it's a session focused on working from home. We get a WH&S trainer in, we get everyone into Sydney, we do one big day, we just train everyone. Now, there is a thing about WHS. You as a manager are responsible for the workplace health and safety of the people at home in their place. Now, you sort of have to come to balance here, because the way we do it at Reinteractive is we make an agreement with our team. We say, well, look, we're not going to enforce our requirement to come and inspect your home to see if your workplace is safe in exchange for you taking some responsibility for your workplace and letting us know about any serious can you fix or improve, or that you can improve or fix. So this needs to be a two-way street with the employees, because obviously employees don't want their manager just coming around for a random workplace health and safety assessment walkthrough of their property, basically, right? It's not going to happen. So we need to make sure there's a two-way street here. So make sure that they have a fixed place to work at home. It's not the couch in front of the TV. It's not the kitchen table. That is the office. And when they're at the office, they're at the office and they do work. And when they get up from the office and they go to the kitchen, they're now at home. And now they do whatever they need to do at home. And then they come back to the office and they do whatever they need to do in the office. You need to make this split, because otherwise it actually creates a situation for the employee that they're never away from home. You know, it can be a desk in the room or something, or if it's a large living space, it can be a corner. This is the workplace, and that's very important. Adequate lighting, seating, desk cable management, fire extinguishers if needed, all this sort of thing. You need to have clear work times and home times. Otherwise, you can actually get to a point where your team will burn out work, and this is not healthy. So clear work times, clear home times. Part of the reason we have the thing of you sign in when you're at work and you sign off when you leave work is to actually encourage people to sign on and sign off, so that they mentally finish work and go home. You know, even though home 2 meters away, they mentally, okay, I'm out, and they move on. And this is important. Earlier, which is also important, is remote work security. So this can be a challenge, something that you do need to consider. At Reinteractive, we enforce that we use Macs only, and one of the reasons for that is their hardware level encryption. And that means that when a laptop gets stolen, and you've had stolen, it doesn't become a security risk, because the worst that anyone can do is they can just erase the hard drive. There's no way to actually decrypt it, you know, short of NASA, NSA, or CIA. Bigger problems than your laptop getting stolen. But you need to encrypt your hard drives. You need to have insurance on those laptops and or spare laptops. We use the joint venture program with Apple, so that if a laptop breaks, Apple will actually give the developer a loaner if the repair is going to take more than 48 hours. So these are things that you need to consider. You also need to make sure these laptops and devices are backed up somehow. There's a home backup or a work backup, and two-factor authentication on all key systems, GitHub, Gmail, whatever it is you're using. You need that second factor of authentication. The other thing that's often overlooked is confidentiality agreements. You need to make sure that's in place for everyone's protection. It just makes things a lot simpler. So when people leave our company, we have a whole checklist that gets followed by our HR team that walks through, you know, wiping the laptop of any company data, that people need to sign off on that, cleaning out accesses to things and all this sort of thing. You need to have a checklist for how do you handle someone leaving, because it's a lot different from an office environment. When you're in an office environment, they leave. You know, they don't have access. I mean, you might have some remote access thing, but in that case, you need a checklist, and you need to be able to execute that checklist efficiently and unwaveringly every time to make sure that you're maintaining the security of you and your clients. And very important point, often overlooked, and something that really you need to make sure is in place. Another key thing to promote is the culture. Remember, environment, you don't have an office party. There's not birthday cakes running around and people coming in crazy hats or whatever to create a culture. So you have to work harder on your culture. So encourage people to be creative. Make theme days in your chat room, for example. That's what we do. So in our main chat room, in that general chat room that's only about wins and communications and chats and things, not so much about work. We have things like, Music Monday, Kitty Tuesday, Corgi Thursday. Don't ask how these all came about. It's a long story. But yeah, on Thursdays, the only GIFs and pictures that are allowed to be posted in our chat room are of corgis. And that's the way it is. And it's very interesting, and it's a bit silly and a bit crazy, but it's fun. And then Monday became the music day, so people post different types of music in there. And Tuesday is all about cats because, well, what would the internet be without cats? And so on and so forth. So these sorts of little things create a culture within the team, create a esprit de corps, and this is something to work towards. The other key point on culture, which actually isn't listed on that slide, but is just as important, is promoting the whole idea of being successful and having lots of wins, and getting out there and telling everyone, hey, we just achieved this, we just achieved this, we did this, we're awesome. So make sure you really push that. It's very, very, very important. Good. So the other one to do is remote work together. So this is where the way we do this at Reinteractive is we make sure the whole team comes together often. Every couple of months, we fly everyone into Sydney, and we meet at a hotel in Sydney, and we have, chats and free food, and it's food where we go, and room size is big enough that everyone get together and communicate. We don't really focus on, it's more on the social side. So we go over long-term, where months, key things that have been done, new directions or changes or updated policies, things like that. It's all our time that we do things, WHS training, and we encourage people to get to know each other and chat, and just go put a face on that person that you've seen as their online handle for the last 3 months. It's actually funny. I work said, hi, my name is, I won't say their name, but they went, hi, my name is blah. What's your name? To me. And I went, I'm Mikel Lindsaar, I own the company, And it's really interesting that even happens, because I know this person and working with him and doing all sorts of things, and he introduced himself to me. So it's important that you get that sort of communication happening within your whole team and make them into a cohesive unit, that they can talk to each other, they can trust each other, they can lean on each other for jobs or production, and they know that their team has got their back. One of the things about getting everyone up to Sydney, though, is that we soon found that trying to handle expense claims and bookings for flights became an absolute nightmare. So what we did was we changed our process of paying out money on this to something different. We just created a travel allowance. The way this works is we added up how sort of thing, and for team days and some other client meeting work, and we just calculated that as an annual amount, and then we just pay that in each pay packet as a tax-free payment. So it's tax-free because it's going to be claimed anyway. It's a travel allowance, you're able to do that. And the individual team members arrange transport. They can spend as much on it or as little on it as they want. They can get different types of hotels. They can even save some money on their travel and earn a bit more money in the end of the day, because they, earn a bit more money. So this has worked out really well, and it's reduced the administration expense of the whole company massively. I mean, if you can imagine working out 40 flights, every couple of months from all around the world, that becomes a bit of a nightmare. So the travel allowance solution has been fantastic. It also means that the team don't have to submit expense claims because they're already getting paid for it. So they just need to lodge it with the government, and they can get their full tax refund at the end of the year as needed. Well for everyone. So this is a good tip if you're having a remote team. Give people a travel allowance, and then just make sure the travel allowance fits their actual expenses, and go from there. And if you pay them a bit extra in the end, that's fine, because if their actual travel for works out $4,500, well, easily saving $500 on the administration nightmare of handling all of those trips. So be generous on it, and it'll work out in your favor. So there are a couple of remote work resources that I'd like you to look at. We're nearing the end, so if you do have questions, please pop them in. I'll make sure that I'll answer them in a minute. Fair Work has flexible working arrangements. Just search for that on their website. And Safe Work New South Wales has remote and isolation, the name of what for. So at Fair Work, searching for remote work gives you links about how you manage remote mining operations off the coast of the country or something like that. So it's not what you want. You're after flexible working arrangements. And that's probably the best resource, and it covers Australia, obviously. And then there's Safe Work New South Wales, remote and isolated work, which is what you want to look at there. So how do you have remote work success? Well, remember, have fun, make it a team activity with a clear purpose, talk with your team members as often as you can. Disagreements are best settled in person or on the phone or Skype or video or whatever, but best in person. Work harder on your company culture to get more people interested in it, and celebrate every win and success loudly and often. And of course, include birthdays in that. It's always a lot of fun, people trying to hide that they're having a birthday, and make a big deal of it because it's important. So that's the end of the webinar. We're about 5 or 6 minutes early, which is great. And if you do have any questions, ask away. I mentioned before, I'm writing a book. It's Confident Software. So you can sign up for that if you like. And yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead. And thank you very much for attending. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And thank you for the great questions that I did receive. And if you think of a question later on today while you are your head's falling down your beautiful down pillow and you're going, oh, I wish I asked this question, feel free to just send it to Rochelle. I'm sure you've all got her email, and I just got another one that came in. Is travel allowance, is it the same for all, dependent on location distance? It's dependent on location and distance from Sydney. So we work it out differently for different people, depending on what they need. Otherwise it would be, we pay our Sydney a smaller travel allowance because Sydney is. Okay, thank you very much everyone for attending. Oh, thanks Steve for saying. I'll give you 8 early minutes. So enjoy the rest of your day. This will be online on our reinteractive YouTube channel a bit later, and you'll be able to view it there and share it with anyone that you want to convince that you need a remote work team. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us and we'll go from there. Thank you very much, and see you all later. Bye.